So, one thing that I really want to talk about today is being able to not set yourself up to fail. One of the worst symptoms of trying to be successful is having a fear of failing. Having a fear of failing. And we shouldn't be afraid of failing if it's going to be a step towards us being successful. One of these mantras that we have is no pain, no gain. It almost seems like you have to stress yourself out, you have to be constantly busy in order to seem respectable for yourself. And a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but what I've seen over the years that I've been giving therapy is that it can be a step towards depression. And for people who suffer from depression, it can actually lead them into this dark wormhole, and that's what we really want to avoid. So my first tip would be, it's okay to show yourself kindness. Kindness and respect isn't being self-indulgent. Trying to reward yourself is probably one of the best things you can do. If you're not going to pat yourself on the back, who's going to do it for you? If we always live in a way that we expect others to recognize our success, we're going to just get lost. We're going to get lost in this little vacuum of trying to please everyone and trying to seem like something we're not. The true self, the true mask is a little bit of vulnerability. To seem vulnerable is okay and it's normal and it's healthy, and to the right person is actually quite beautiful and attractive. So that's something else we want to look into. Self-compassion isn't to be confused with self-esteem. This isn't about having a big ego. People in high self-esteem tend to respond to failure by blaming factors beyond their control. Yeah, this can help them deal with the disappointment, but it's not so useful from a learning perspective. Whereas people who are high in self-compassion, they're honest, about their own shortcomings and contribution to failure, but they don't beat themselves up for it. Another thing that I've noticed is, when someone's trying to be really harsh on themselves and they get sucked into it, um, they kind of stay in this mode for a while, and they become really emotional, and it might lead to crying, which is expected. It's expected to cry, when you feel like a failure. But then there's this savage cycle of beating yourself up, and you are your best friend. You are your best friend, and best friends tend to accept each other's flaws and shortcomings. But at the same time, a best friend is someone that, you know, when they see that you're going somewhere wrong, you're doing something wrong, they're not afraid to point out and tell you, you know what, this is going to lead to self sabotaging or a destructive behavior. And so, as a best friend, you want to listen to yourself. When you're more self compassionate, then there's a lot less physiological stress. In a study out this year, a team led by Kelly Robinson at the University of Manitoba in Canada asked dozens of young adults to imagine how they would feel after being self-compassionate after failure. Those people who were habitually less self-compassionate were inclined to say self-kindness would make them feel less industrious, ambitious, responsible, modest, careful, and competitive, as compared with the other participants who practiced more self-compassion in their lives. On the other hand, the tough on themselves participants reckoned they'd feel stronger and more responsible if they responded to failure with self-criticism. If this sounds like you, before you get going on the self-compassion exercises, the first thing you need to do is confront your beliefs about what it means to be successful and competitive. So maybe you want to stop holding yourself to these hard to reach standards. Did you just give a poorly received public talk? We've all done that. Are you procrastinating on a major project? Who isn't? Who's not procrastinating? Don't crucify yourself for these failures. Don't bury your head in the sand either. Accept that these are setbacks, are part of life, and try to practice comforting yourself as you would a friend in a similar situation. Another thing that you might want to do is try to make a diary. Try to make a diary for yourself and monitor your progress. If you write a diary for a period of 5 days, and then you try to compare yourself over those 5 days, you'll realize that there's a little bit of obsessiveness, maybe some compulsiveness in wanting to change, in wanting to make changes happen. So then you're going to have to look at that behavior and say, you know what? I'm being too forceful with myself. Some things take time. Some things take time, and it's okay. What are the advantages of taking your time and breaking tasks down into small, small, manageable steps? What can be the advantages of hiring an assistant or going to a consultant and getting advice before you go and you try to work through your plan? It's okay to get a little bit more help. Some of the most successful people in our decades, they went to people, they went to consultants, and they got a lot of help, they got a lot of advice, and they weren't afraid to ask for free things. I think Steve Jobs was one of those people that he just asked for a piece of equipment, and he got it for free. And then that was one of his initial creative projects. So it's okay to ask for help. One of the things I've noticed in our society is if you're working through the high school system, if you're working through the university system, there is a lot of pressure, and it's actually having a negative effect because then you're comparing yourself to others, and each different person has different experiences in their life that's going to affect them, how much effort they put in, what they can achieve, what their results are going to be in a certain time frame. Some people take far longer than others, and it doesn't mean that they are any less successful than their peers. So it's okay to break things down into manageable steps, because sometimes when you start with a project, the final product is nothing like you had initially set out to achieve. So it's okay, there's pros and cons to everything. It's just being able to accept yourself beyond this harshness. So one